1, 2, 3, 4. Well, we've broken the back of this election campaign, haven't we? And when I say we've broken its back, I mean we're halfway through, not that it's completely paralysed. Although it is true, not much happened last week. But if you looked very, very closely, you could detect some movement in the lower extremities, particularly in the polls. Labor, for a brief moment, were ahead for the first time since the rolling of Tony Abbott. And I assume they mean this rolling of Tony Abbott. So what happened? Why the sudden surge in Bill Shorten's popularity? Well, I don't know if you watched the show last week. In fact, there was a State of Origin match on, so I'm pretty sure you didn't. But we featured, for the first time in this campaign, a couple of Bill zingers. Now, I'm not saying we have the sort of influence that can make or break a Prime Minister. I'll leave that for the history books. But I think it's pretty clear between you and me and anyone else who might be watching that we do. Now, like the government, I know what you're thinking. Shaun, you sneering left-wing byproduct of Whitlam's insane free education for knobs policy, why don't you use your powers for good as well as evil and help Malcolm Turnbull? Now, you know my views on Malcolm Turnbull. Yes, I'm very happy to do it. In fact, like a lot of you, I've been re-watching last week's leaders' debate at the National Press Club over and over again, like that cat video with the monkey. You know, because it's just so adorable. Although, you know, it does kind of get a bit weird at the end there. Anyway, one thing I picked up that I didn't notice initially is that Malcolm Turnbull has a certain giveaway tick, which, in my opinion, he'll need to get rid of if he's going to pull out ahead of Bill. It happens when he's not entirely convinced by what he's saying. It's not a facial tick like whenever he opens his mouth on refugees or climate change. It's more subtle than that. He goes up on his tippy toes.
Every element of our plan supports that. Our opponents have nothing to say about the economy other than increasing taxes, and that is not just a list of statistics, not from a career in politics, and I'm very happy to talk about climate change. But we will spend federal money over the next 4 years. You have less of something, then increase the tax. That will result in less investment, and if you have less investment over the next 3 years, if the second year up to $50 million for the great healthcare services. He doesn't want the banks to get a tax cut. Are those with turnovers of less than $100 million with a generous social welfare safety net?
Now, it's a habit he could easily get rid of if he was just a little bit taller. which would also help him, as a feminist, get up there and break that bloody glass ceiling. Now, Malcolm has also admitted this week that he was once a child. And that makes him very relatable because most of us were once children, particularly when we were younger. But another thing that Malcolm should do is something that Bill does very well, and that's talk about sport. There's nothing Australian voters love more than our politicians talking about various codes of football. Now, I admit I don't know too much about them. I'm more a badminton man. That's me there and the rest of the Adelaide Shuttlecocks back in '78. But rugby league, as I understand it, is very popular. If Malcolm talked about state of origin as well as Bill Shaun did last week, I guarantee the Libs would increase in the polls by 120%.
I'm going to go for the Maroons because my wife is a Queenslander. The Storm, I think, are the underdogs slightly in the under the bookies market.
Quite right too. Melbourne Storm were considered rank outsiders in the game between New South Wales and Queensland. In fact, I don't think they even turned up. Must have been marooned somewhere. Points to the man standing behind Bill in that clip, though, for not leaning over and cramping Bill's style by correcting it. But can Malcolm learn anything from Donald Trump? A man who seems to know a thing or two about... a thing or two about popularity. A man who, regardless of how wrong he is and what he says and thinks or says and doesn't think, looks like being the next leader of his country. Here's how Donald Trump expresses his views on America's favourite sport. And just before we start feeling too smug about the relative superiority of our political candidates compared with our American cousins, perhaps we should wipe that smirk off my face and look at some of our own local bozos.
The transition to retirement scheme, transition to retirement income scheme, how is that taxed?
What do you mean the transition to retirement? If you're talking about super more generally?
No, transition to retirement.
I'll have to look at that particular policy.
Will Labor keep the school kids bonus? The baby bonus, school kids bonus. Well, you'd have to refer to our relevant shadow.
Are you aware of the transition to retirement scheme?
Well, I'm certainly aware that we have one, yeah.
How does it work?
Well, Neil, this is obviously a gotcha moment. You want me to go through...
No,
it's not my portfolio. And
this is the hole in your whole logic.
Is that contributions or earnings?
This is the super rate.
The contributions or earnings? I'm not clear.
On earnings.
Are you sure you don't want your chief of staff in?
I'm just trying to give you the correct information.
Well, it's a big difference, isn't it?
It is a big difference.
So it's a tax on earnings. What about contributions?
Sorry, what? What do you...
And that's even before we asked Pauline Hanson, Glenn Lazarus and Jackie Lambie about superannuation. And incidentally, what about the micro parties or the even smaller nano parties? What level of cluelessness do they have that's different from what we've come to expect from the libs and the labs and the gruns? Let's find out now as we give some advice to you on what Malcolm Turnbull calls... OK, now first up we have former Australian Idol presenter James Mathieson, who is running as an independent against former Australian government presenter Tony Abbott in his seat of Warringah. Now, there's a bit of a history between these two, with Mr Abbott having had a crack at James Mathieson's credibility on former Channel 10 morning network tax write-off Wake Up.
If we were at war, we wouldn't be giving out information that is of use to the enemy just because we might have an idle curiosity about it ourselves.
You see, idle curiosity. An idle curiosity about it. Yeah, it's a bit of a low blow from a man who once boxed for Oxford. James, for his part, remained very professional, or as professional as anyone could be who's involved with Wake Up. Anyway, if you'd like to vote for James, SMS James to 1889966 or call 1902 555562. Or if you'd like to vote for Tony, SMS Tony to 1889967 or call 1902 555563. Now, someone else to look out for is this man, Robert Borsak. Seen here with what I assume is Donald Trump's scalp. He's a New South Wales MP. He's not running federally, but I still think we should look out for him.
The New South Wales MP is making headlines here and overseas after revealing he shot, killed and then ate an elephant while on a hunting trip in Africa.
Now, Robert Borsak is a member of the Shooters, Fishers and Farmers Party, so you certainly can't accuse him of not being across his party's policies. But I guess the elephant in the room is now very nervous, especially if that room is Mr Borsak's dining room. Uniquely, though, it's a meal that both the diner and the meal itself never forgets. Now, the Australian Christian lobby is a small concern for reasons which will become apparent in a moment, and they have done what none of the major parties have had the guts to do, and that's compare same-sex marriage and safe schools to the rise of Nazi Germany. The lobby's own Obersturmführer, Lyle Shelton, said that the cowardice of Australia's gatekeepers is causing unthinkable things to happen, just as unthinkable things happened in Germany in the 1930s. And for those progressive doubters, here is footage of an army of gay couples on the march in their recent invasion of Poland. I wish them well. In fact, like you, I hope the Australian Christian lobby will one day have enough members to become the Australian Christian Hotel. OK, now here's another party that was mentioned in the papers on the weekend. Unfortunately, it was in an article titled "How Far-Right Politics Crashed and Burned in Australia." Fortunately, though, party leader Kirralie Smith doesn't know what the media do or don't focus on because she doesn't watch television and only reads articles that people send her. So she'd be completely unaware on a few levels. As borne out by the party's manifesto, which calls for a ban on face coverings in public, a 10-year freeze on permanent resident visas from Muslim countries, rejection of same-sex marriage, and claims that resettling people from Africa, the Middle East and Asia is counterproductive and drains these nations of their most valuable assets. Political correctness, not the only thing that's wrong, so is Kirraly's geography. But one thing that Kirraly is not alone on is her call for face coverings to be banned. The Victorian Police Minister has called for the same thing after recent clashes between anti-racist and anti-Islamic activists. Mind you, these sorts of clashes are nothing new, and they've spawned a lot of new political groups. The halal intolerant have been clashing with the anti-halal intolerant at food expos all across Australia for a while now. Disagreements over the way food is prepared can often lead to ugliness, as this picture of Gordon Ramsay shows. But the behaviour of these two protest groups makes the tension between couples on MKR seem tame by comparison. But who's to blame, really? Because inside the expos themselves, everyone seems perfectly happy, eating halloumi, oblivious to the overreaction they've caused outside. Jasper Zellweger from the Party for Freedom. You presumably are in favour of people being able to eat what they want?
No, we're against halal sort of thing.
All right, so the freedom your party stands for is?
Our freedom sort of thing.
All right, so your freedom to stop other people doing what they want?
Sort of thing, yeah.
Go home, you racist pig! See what we have to put up with?
All right, hang on, we'll get to you in a moment, OK?
Oh, my mistake, sorry.
Now, Jasper, I'm just a little bit confused about your philosophy, because in the footage we saw some members of your group dressed in the Saudi keffiyeh, making them Wahhabi Sunni.
Yeah.
But he was waving an Australian flag, whereas some of the other men were wearing niqabs, which I believe is haram under Islamic law.
Yeah, listen, we don't discriminate sort of thing with religion or gender. We just sort of reckon everyone has the right to be against halal. It doesn't matter where you are or who you come from.
Wacom Spinifex, you are against the right of Jasper's group to express their views.
We were innocently shouting them down, trying to get the Aussie flag off them. I personally was kicking some guy when they bloody turned on.
Right, but surely the most interesting thing...
Freedom of speech is not just about drowning out somebody that's yelling at you. It's about the right to be heard.
Over somebody else.
Whoever is louder. Those bloody cops came in on their horses into a bloody dangerous situation. That's cruelty to animals.
Yeah, so is halal, mate. And why should we have to pay for it, sort of thing? It's bloody un-Australian.
You're bloody un-Australian.
So are you, mate.
Well, at least we're agreed on that. So much in common. Why can't we bloody live together? Which brings me to Pauline Hanson's One Nation party. As you can see, she's on tour at the moment. I understand those who caught her set at Runaway Bay very nearly did. But she has changed since the old days. Unlike Kirraly Smith and Donald Trump, she believes political correctness should be recycled, as you can see here. Presumably so that people can use it again and again. So good on her for wanting an all-inclusive way for us to communicate with each other. And for those who think that Pauline is xenophobic and racist, have a look at this campaign launch video and I think you'll change your mind. At least I think she hopes you will.
Well, this is the night of our launch, the Pauline Hanson One Nation launch. All my candidates, what a wonderful night. Yes, we had some protesters outside. Yes, they were in the room trying to disrupt the meeting. And what was so stupid about it, they're calling racism, they're saying, you know, stop the freedom of speech. And that's the whole point. Pauline Hanson One Nation is all about freedom of speech. And here I have these two lovely girls with me, Rose and Googie or Grace. Which one? Googie or Grace? Don't care. Can't answer anything. But you know what? It's come out of tonight's meeting. These two girls were here. Gorgeous girls. And what's our message to the rest of the world? You don't have to be white to be Australian.
Okay, so just so we're clear, One Nation has no problem with your skin colour. It's just about who you worship, where you worship, and the country you come from. Still to come later in the week.
These Syrians aren't Christians. You can tell by the claw marks.
Talk to me, Rebecca, and in English this time.
Vampires. Whoever funded this shit wouldn't know an international market from Czechoslovakian public access.
Tell me something I don't know.
Has this been checked for political correctness?
Is the Pope fucking gay?
200 of your years ago, when the big boat came, the men took plant samples and catalogued them.
His acting's weak.
Jack, the portal's closing.
10 minutes here. Tell me more of your people and their culture, Alfonso. I'm listening. We all are. Maybe there can at last be change and acceptance for all of us.
These sub-androids have human rights, and you and your kind, all of us, are refusing them.
It's not up to me, Billy. You saw the inexplicable way his body rose in the air and turned into 1,000 butterflies. Try explaining that to his birth mother with all your Western science.
Lieutenant Taffy, Colonel Stone, when's the last time you saw a rain of frogs fall over the city?
Never. Why?
Don't ask. Better come with me. All of you both. Now!
Ahead in the program, I talked to independent candidate for the Queensland Senate, Maurice Portion.
These are the principles that I stand for.
And what about your preferences?
Tall, with a sort of fierce haircut, Shaun. I've got a real thing for glasses and slutty lipstick. Hang on, I see what you mean.
This lot might be the fresh food people, but they have no freaking idea about selling laundry detergent properly. At least according to the ACCC, who fined them $9 million for duping customers by selling only ultra concentrate but not passing the savings on. Woolies, for their part, have blamed their former buyers for their part in Project Mastermind. The mastermind behind Project Mastermind is former buyer for Woolies, Dragon O'Hennessy. Is buyer the right way to describe you, Mr. O'Hennessy?
Well, buyer, dealer, juggler. I answer to many names. Just don't call me late for bail application.
So, Mr. Hennessy or Dragon, how did this deal go down?
Well, it's simple. I contact my suppliers. Cousins, Unilever, Colgate, Palmolive, Pete. Palmolive Pete is my very good friend. And we make the ultra concentrate pure, not cut with shit, you know. You take sniff of that.
Lime.
Is not only fragrant, is smaller, cheaper to transport, to store, but street value exactly the same as before.
I see.
We make millions more than fine. $9 million is like a drop of Powerball detergent tablet in ocean. ACCC would not know if their arse was on fire. And even if they did, they would take months trying to get underpants manufacturer to federal court for improper labeling. And by that time, arse is completely incinerated. Shaun, you take this home.
Oh, no, I couldn't do it. Actually, no, it's fine. No. Okay.
You try that on stubborn, hard to remove stains on collar and underarm. It's my gift to you. You want more? You find me in Woolworth's car park next to dumpster reeking of past used by date milk.
Thank you, Dragon. And a warning to anyone caught using this sort of laundry detergent, you could find yourselves in hot water. And now, in an effort to accurately reflect the way old media embraces new media, a story sourced entirely from Twitter. South Australia, a state to the north of both Victoria and Tasmania, is smack bang in the middle of an electoral poster skirmish. @CPine tweeted, Sturt Libs put up 1,700 posters, about 500 stolen. Nick Xenophon team helpers watched removing Pine posters. To which @Nick_Xenophon responded that they'd had posters pinched too, but they weren't pointing fingers, except, of course, to point out who was pointing the fingers at them. Then Liberal ex-frontbencher Jamie Briggs, no stranger to having fingers pointed at him, joined the Twitter war, tweeting that by his estimate about 200 were gone in Mayo. That's the electorate, I assume, not the condiment. But whereas a lot of other news services would be happy to leave the story there and throw to an ad about some dreadful news show where complete strangers fondle each other, or someone weeps about a dessert they've made, or maybe even include the ad in the show as an actual news item, we go further and actually investigate what happened. Jelly Canister, you have actually solved the mystery of these missing posters, haven't you?
I have, Shaun.
All right. Tell us what happened.
I stole them.
You must have felt like Nancy Drew to work that one out.
I couldn't help myself, Shaun. I'm a total fangirl when it comes to Christopher Pine. His funny little smile, his Adelaide accent, his crinkly Dr. Strangelove hair. The way his suits are made to scale so they appear normal on his tiny body. Everything about him is so dreamy and cool. Who wouldn't steal 500 posters of him and put them up in their room?
And this is a padded room, presumably?
I once saw him in person, you know.
Yes.
He was down at Port Adelaide. He was looking very handsome with his vacant and commanding stare.
Announcing the submarine deal, I guess.
No, I don't think so. Not at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Now, what about the Nick Xenophon posters? Do you know who stole them?
Oh, that was me as well, Shaun. I felt really guilty about it too because, you know, I was already fixated on Christopher, but in all my thousands of letters and cards to his electoral office and home and even the poem about him that I had tattooed on my back, I never once said my obsession with him was exclusive.
All right. Is there any room for Nick's posters on your walls, though?
The nurse said no. So I had to make them into a papier-mâché version of Corey Bernardi, who I'm also obsessed with.
All right, and as I understand it, you brought that in for us to have a look at.
Oh, no, that's my cousin. I practiced on her because, you know, I wanted to get it exactly right, otherwise it doesn't feel real.
All right. And I take it you also stole Jamie Briggs's posters as well?
No way. I'd never have anything to do with that weirdo.
All right, thank you very much, Jelly. But right now it's time for...
News from countries that aren't Australia. Proudly brought to you by...
The Mad as Hell Voting Gyroscope. Answer a fun series of questions like, do you prefer silver hair or brown hair? Or, who looks more uncomfortable engaged in a sporting activity? Or our favourite, are you more likely to vote for a politician who stabbed their former leader in the back or a politician who stabbed their former leader in the back? And help us collect information about you for reasons that will become apparent come the revolution. The Mad as Hell Voting Gyroscope. That's nice.
To the United States first were a pair of 19th century anti-slavery documents signed by Abraham Lincoln have sold at Sotheby's in New York for a record sum. Yeah, I don't know. Even though it's anti-slavery, you've still got a bunch of rich white people bidding at an auction. To the Vatican now, where His Holiness Pope Francis lives, an actual proper Channel 9 news journo who isn't Tara Brown has more.
Pope Francis has praised George Clooney, Richard Gere and Salma Hayek for their work in promoting a Vatican education initiative that helps poor communities.
But not for their work in Batman and Robin, Shall We Dance and Grown Ups Too, which the pontiff panned respectively as cartoonish, embarrassing and not worth doing the first time round. George and Amal Clooney later got to have a private audience with the Pope, George in an Armani suit and Amal looking fetching in a long-sleeved black Atelier Versace knee-length, but unfortunately did not get to meet our own Cardinal George Pell, who was off having a mixed grill with his pulmonologist. Looking divine in a black ankle-length satan, while George set tongues wagging in a Harris tweed sports jacket from Peter Jackson, and his ability to down a pint of Peroni in 4 seconds. Finally, a story about us, as seen by the rest of the world, and censorship, as disgusting a word as f***, in my opinion, and one which should be stricken from the English language. Yet a recent UNESCO report examining the effect climate change is having on World Heritage sites and tourism has had bits cut out of it at the Australian government's request, with all mention of the Great Barrier Reef removed. Incredible. It's like setting up a Hotties of Australian Television Facebook page and leaving off me. Am I right? about government environmental spokesperson Bison Jugular?
Yeah, look, it wasn't a decision taken lightly, Shaun, but we did have a number of concerns with the reef being included in the report.
The chief being?
That the reef was included in the report. Also, the report's title.
Destinations at risk, world heritage and tourism in a changing climate?
Last year, the UN World Heritage Committee agreed not to place the reef on its list of sites deemed in danger, OK?
OK, but why did they do that?
Well, we asked them to. Now, if this UNESCO report had come out and listed the reef as a so-called destination at risk, then this would have been very confusing to people. The reef's not in danger last year, but suddenly now it's at risk. See how confusing it is?
No.
All right, keep your pants on, Waleed. Look, it's all about the tourism, isn't it? We'll kill the industry in FNQ if we have UNESCO going on about so-called risk and danger to the reef.
Yes, but isn't the coral bleaching only going to be worse precisely because it's being ignored?
Yeah, I know, but tourists won't come to see a reef that's been destroyed by global warming, will they?
Yes, but it's being destroyed by global warming while you censor UNESCO reports.
Yeah, but if we didn't censor the report, then tourists will be scared and confused and think that the reef is being destroyed by climate change.
Yeah, but it is being destroyed by climate change.
But if they're told that, they won't come to see the reef anyway.
What, the dead coral reef?
Oh, you think people go to Egypt to see mummies want to see them alive? Or that dinosaur in the Smithsonian? Oh, maybe Greece should fix up the Parthenon because it's falling apart, or America fill in the Grand Canyon because the glaciers melted away. Maybe you'd have us put a fresh coat of paint on the Great Wall of China or replaster Mount Vesuvius because the top's come off. People don't mind looking at something dead and lifeless and devoid of colour, Shaun, as the ratings for Midsummer Murders prove.
Yeah, I like that show.
Yeah, I don't mind it.
Fairfax, a pivotal seat previously sat on by the eponymous head of the Palmer United Party, Clive Party, will be a key battleground in this up-and-coming election, particularly given that PUP's margin is just 0.03%. Coincidentally, the same amount in the dollar that creditors of Queensland Nickel can expect to receive. Mad as Hell's Derricka Boying visited Fairfax and filed this report to take off any rough edges.
Like several of the state's former ministers and police officers, the seat of Fairfax lies in Queensland. With voters disenchanted after the failed Palmer United experiment, candidates are finding it's a volatile electorate, where the locals have grown somewhat tired of unfulfilled promises. You only have to scratch the surface to find a palpable disquiet and even frustration here, which seems to extend to all corners of the community, old and young. The usually friendly locals seem somehow less approachable. With the loss of jobs from Clive Palmer's failed Coolum resort having created something of a trust vacuum between politicians and the electorate. The exception, however, is popular independent candidate Ivan Christ, who has withdrawn his candidacy for personal reasons. Derek Boyne, mad as hell.
Well, not coming out because the Chaser on in a minute with some real satire. Audacious Melbourne Cup hat design set to delight. Liberal campaign bus gets stuck and crack appears in PM's relationship with media. And Bill Shorten combines environment and finance into a single portfolio.
Our Great Barrier Reef is a national treasure.
You won't see stuff of that quality on Chaser. Well, it's hard to believe, but the woman famous for having a mattress size named after her is celebrating her 90th birthday. For most of the year, apparently, including this weekend. Mad as Hell's royal watcher Lois Price is in the Mad as helicopter. And Lois, you've been going through the Vanity Fair photo shoot Her Majesty did with Annie Leibovitz.
Yeah, I know, Shaun, and it's a beautiful collection. It really humanises her.
Is she not human?
Oh, well, from my position high in the sky, it's hard to tell, but have a look at her here with her 2 purebreds and her 2 crossbreds, and then here with her 7 inbreds. There's also a beaut photo of her and Prince Philip. There they are, burning Rolf Harris's painting of her.
Thanks, Lois. We'll cross back to you the moment there's another photograph in the magazine.
I'm not going anywhere, Shaun, physically or professionally. Scared of death? Every year thousands of Australians die. Keep the Grim Reaper's hand off your shoulder and reproductive organs with a free health check at the Queen Inn's pop-up massage tent. Relax in an uneven plastic chair and let Lee's highly untrained staff rub your body or they'll have to tie you down. Mention this program for a look of confusion. I'm Lois Price for Mad as Hell.
Goodbye.
Jive, baby.
That's nice.